there everyone. We're now starting our Introduction to Management course. We're now on chapter 5, which is Building the Foundation, Forms of Business Ownership. As the chapter overview, in this chapter you will explore one of the most fundamental and important questions in business. What legal form should the company take? You will start by considering the 3 major types of ownership: sole proprietorships, partnerships, and corporations. Then look at current trends in mergers and acquisitions, and then the chapter concludes with an overview of joint ventures and strategic partnerships. Choosing a form of business ownership. One of the most fundamental decisions you must make when starting a business is selecting a form of business ownership. Picking the right ownership structure involves knowing your long-term goals and how you plan to achieve them. Your choice also depends on your desire for ownership and your tolerance for risk. The 3 most common forms of business ownership are sole proprietorship, partnership, and corporation. Each form has its own characteristic internal structure, legal status, size, and fields to which it is best suited. Each has key advantages and disadvantages for the owners. Sole proprietorships. A sole proprietorship is a business owned by one person, although it may have many employees, and it is the easiest and least expensive form of business to start. Advantages of sole proprietorships. A sole proprietorship has many advantages, starting with ease of establishment. About the only legal requirement is obtaining the necessary business licenses. Another advantage is the satisfaction of working for yourself. As a sole proprietor, you can make your own decisions, such as which hours to work, whom to hire, what prices to charge, whether to expand, and whether to shut down. You also get to keep all the after-tax profits. As a sole proprietor, you also have the advantage of privacy. You do not have to reveal your performance or plans to anyone. You do not have to prepare any reports for outsiders as you would if the company were a public corporation. Disadvantages of sole proprietorships. One major drawback of a sole proprietorship is the proprietor's unlimited liability. From a legal standpoint, the owner and the business are one and the same. Any legal damages or debts incurred by the business are the owner's responsibility. As a sole proprietor, you might have to sell personal assets such as your home to satisfy a business debt. In some cases, the sole proprietor's independence can also be a drawback because it means that the business depends on the talents and managerial skills of one person if problems crop up. The sole proprietor may not recognize them or may be too proud to seek help, especially given the high cost of hiring experienced managers and professional consultants. Other disadvantages include the difficulty of a single-person operation obtaining large sums of capital and the limited life of a sole proprietorship. Partnerships. Partnership, a legal association of 2 or more people as co-owners of a business for profit. You and your partners would share the profits and losses of the business and perhaps the management responsibilities. Your partnership might remain a small 2-person operation, or it might have multiple partners. Partnerships are of 2 basic types. In a general partnership, all partners are considered equal by law and all are liable for the business's debts. To guard against personal liability exposure, some organizations choose to form a limited partnership. Under this type of partnership, one or more persons act as general partners who run the business while the remaining partners are passive investors, that is, they are not involved in managing the business. These partners are called limited partners because their liability, the amount of money they can lose, is limited to the amount of their capital contribution. Many states now recognize limited liability partnerships in which all partners in the business are limited partners and have only limited liability for the debts and obligations of the partnerships. Advantages of partnerships. Proprietorships and partnerships have some of the same advantages. Like proprietorships, partnerships are easy to form. Partnerships also provide the same potential tax advantages as proprietorships. However, in a couple of respects, partnerships are superior to sole proprietorships, largely because there is strength in numbers. When you have several people putting up their money, you can start a more ambitious enterprise. In addition, the diversity of skills that good partners bring to an organization leads to innovation in products, services, and processes, which improves your chances of success. The partnership form of ownership also broadens the pool of capital available to the business. Disadvantages of partnerships. Except in limited liability partnerships, at least one member of every partnership must be a general partner. All general partners have unlimited liability. Thus, if one of the firm's partners makes a serious mistake and is sued by a disgruntled client, all general partners are financially accountable. General partners are also responsible for any debts incurred by partnerships. Another disadvantage of partnerships is the potential for interpersonal problems. Difficulties can arise when each partner wants to be responsible for managing the organization. Keeping it together, the partnership agreement. A partnership agreement is a written document that states all the terms of operating the partnership by spelling out the partner's rights and responsibilities. One of the most important features of such an agreement is to address sources of conflict that could result in battles between partners. The agreement spells out such details as the division of profits, decision-making, authority, expected contributions, and dispute resolution. Moreover, a key element of this document is the buy or sell agreement, which defines the steps a partner must take to sell his or her partnership interest, or what will happen if one of the partners dies. Corporations. A corporation is a legal entity distinct from any individual persons with the power to own property and conduct business. Regardless of how many owners a corporation has, some have thousands of owners, the law generally treats the corporation the same way it treats an individual person. The solution was to sell shares in the business to numerous investors who would get a cut of the profits in exchange for their money. These investors got a chance to vote on certain issues that might affect the value of their investment, but they were not involved in managing day-to-day operations. The investors were protected from the risks associated with such large undertakings by having their liability limited to the amount of their investment. Ownership. The corporation is owned by its shareholders, who are issued shares of stock in return for their investments. These shares are represented by a stock certificate, and they may be bequeathed or sold to someone else. As a result, the company's ownership may change drastically over time while the company and its management remain intact, as long as the company is economically sound. The corporation's unlimited lifespan, combined with its ability to raise capital, gives it the potential for significant growth. Common stock. Most stock issued by corporations is common stock. Owners of common stock have voting rights and get one vote for each share of stock they own. Depending on the corporation, they can elect the company's board of directors in addition to voting on major policies that will affect ownership. Besides conferring voting privileges, common stock frequently pays dividends, payments to shareholders from the company's profits. Dividends can be paid in cash or stock, called stock dividends. They are declared by the board of directors, but their payment is not mandatory. In addition to dividends, common shareholders can earn a return on their investment. If shareholders sell their stock in good times for more than they paid for it, they stand to pocket a handsome gain. Preferred stock. In contrast to common stock, preferred stock does not usually carry voting rights. It does, however, give preferred shareholders the right of first claim on the corporation's assets in the form of dividends after all the company's debts have been paid. This right is especially important if the company ever goes out of business. Moreover, preferred shareholders get their dividends before common shareholders do. Like common stock, however, dividends on preferred stock may be omitted in times of financial hardship. Still, most preferred stock is cumulative preferred stock, which means that any unpaid dividends must be paid before dividends are paid to common shareholders. Public versus private ownership. The stock of a private corporation is held by only a few individuals or companies and is not publicly traded. By withholding their stock from public sale, the owners retain complete control over their operations and ownership. These companies finance their operating costs and growth from either company earnings or other sources, such as bank loans. Doctors, lawyers, and some other professionals often join forces in a special type of private corporation called a professional corporation. As with other private corporations, shares in these professional corporations are not available to the public. In contrast, the stock of a public corporation is held by in contrast, the stock of a public corporation is held by and available for sale to the general public. Thus, the company is said to be publicly held or publicly traded. These are the stocks you see listed in the newspaper stock tables and on various websites that offer investing information. The primary reason for going public is to help finance the enterprise in addition to providing a ready supply of capital. Public ownership has other advantages and disadvantages. Among the advantages are increased liquidity, enhanced visibility, and the establishment of an independent market value for the company. Moreover, having a public traded stock gives companies flexibility to use such stock to acquire other firms. Nevertheless, selling stock to the public also has distinct disadvantages. 1. The cost of going public is high, up to hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. 2. The filing requirements with the Securities and Exchange Commission are burdensome. 3. Ownership control is reduced. And 4. Management must be ready to handle the administrative and legal demands of heightened public exposure. And 5. The company is subjected to the stock market's incessant demand for quarterly results. Advantages of corporations. No other form of business ownership can match the success of the corporation in bringing together money, resources, and talent, in accumulating assets, and in creating wealth. As it grows, a corporation gains from a diverse labor pool, greater financing options, and expanded research and development capabilities. The corporation has certain inherent qualities that make it the best vehicle for reaching those objectives, including limited liability. Although a corporate entity can assume tremendous liabilities, it is the corporation that is liable and not the various shareholders. In addition to limited liability, corporations that sell stock to the general public have the advantage of liquidity, which means that investors can easily convert their stock into cash by selling it on the open market. This option makes buying stock in a corporation attractive to many investors. In contrast, liquidating the assets of a sole proprietorship or partnership can be difficult. Moreover, shareholders of public corporations can easily transfer their ownership by selling their shares to someone else. Thus, corporations tend to be in a better position than proprietorships and partnerships to make long-term plans with their unlimited lifespan and funding available through the sale of stock. Disadvantages of corporations. Corporations are not without some disadvantages. The paperwork and costs associated with incorporation can be burdensome, particularly if you plan to sell stock to the public. The complexity varies from state to state, but regardless of where you live, it is wise to consult an attorney and an accountant before incorporating. In addition, corporations are taxed twice. They must pay federal and state corporate income tax on the company's profits, and individual shareholders must pay income taxes on their share of the company's profits received as dividends. Another drawback pertains to public-owned corporations. As mentioned earlier, such corporations are required by the government to publish information about their finances and operations. Disclosing financial information increases the company's vulnerability to competitors and to those who might want to take over control of the company against the wishes of the existing management. Corporate governance. Although a corporation's common shareholders own the business, they are rarely involved in managing it, particularly if the corporation is publicly traded. Instead, the common shareholders elect a board of directors to represent to represent them, and the directors in turn select the corporation's top officers who actually run the company. The term corporate governance can be used in a broad sense to describe all the policies, procedures, relationships, and systems in place to oversee the successful and legal operation of the enterprise. Media coverage tends to define governance in a more narrow sense, as the responsibilities and performance of the board of directors specifically. The center of power in a corporation usually lies with the chief executive officer, together with the chief financial officer and other C-level executives, such as the chief technology officer, chief information officer, and the chief operating officer. Titles vary from one corporation to the next. The CEO is responsible for establishing company policies, managing corporate direction, and making the big decisions that will affect the company's growth and competitive position. The CEO may also be the chairman of the board, the president of the corporation, or sometimes all three. Now, before we go on to shareholders, we'll finish our lesson here. We will carry on with shareholders next week. So thank you very much, and have a good evening. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Okay, we'll stop here. Burada bitirelim. İkinciye başlayalım. Tekrar başına döndürmem gerekir mi chapter 5'e yoksa? Önümüzdeki derste görüşmek üzere gibi bir cümle alalım. Okay. Sonra diğer derse geçelim. Tamam. Geriye mi döneyim? We will finish our lesson here, and we will carry on with shareholders in the next lesson. Thank you very much. We'll finish here. Thank you.